In any football season, especially by the time we get to this point, there are some incredible subplots bubbling on. And so I want to talk about a lot of those, the way that Liverpool's season is going, and also the way that Bournemouth are one of the more difficult sides as we enter this really tricky period for Liverpool. I've already said it, we have already entered it, and it's a good start, frankly. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, but off the top, I want to acknowledge Mo Salah. There are some big headlines in this game, and Mo Salah is one of those people making them. 20 plus goals in another Premier League season. One of them was a penalty, sure, but the other one was a quite sublime Mo Salah classic, and one that separated Liverpool from Bournemouth, but also the rest of the pack on a critical weekend, which feels like it could have some real gravity by the end of the year. It's pretty amazing, really, when you look at the company that Mo Salah is keeping. The 20 plus goals in 5 different seasons has only really been achieved by Alan Shearer, Thierry Henry, Kun Aguero, and one other. There are a lot of big names in there. That's pretty much the all-star who's who, hey, who's up there on Mount Rushmore style of goal-scoring type players in the Premier League, and Mo Salah is still very much on it. The people who underestimated him as a winger when he first came into the league, even the people who said he would only get 10 plus goals per season, maybe that's a kind of Haaland will only get 15 plus goals this season level of tape, but we'll get onto that another time. Mo Salah is incredibly influential. But also, he's one of those players who ghosts in and out, he doesn't even really ghost in and out of games. He doesn't get acknowledged for the whole game, right? And that's very much the life of a winger, right? It's someone who plays on the periphery of the game by his very nature. But at the same time, Mo is able to bring people towards him so quickly and is such a danger almost constantly that he drags Liverpool's overall gravity over to his side of the field, making it difficult for Kerkez, the player that Liverpool were very interested in at one point, multiple times occupied. He was brilliant in this game. He was attacking, and even then he conceded. There are multiple different things that I look at with Kerkez, and I think you're good. I can see why we would have wanted you as a replacement, but I also think, wow, that makes Mo Salah one of the best in the world, because the only other person I really would have wanted to match up against Mo Salah at any one time would have been Virgil van Dijk or indeed Andy Robertson. Now I don't know if there is anyone who can really contain Mo Salah without basically staying on him for the entire game. They can't play their game unless they play our game, and that is a key part of where Liverpool's overall narrative of the season is now going. I expected this game to be a lot more... I guess I expected Bournemouth to bring in a little bit more. And don't get me wrong, they did. They hit the woodwork a number of times. Arguably, they created some of the better chances of the game. They got a very equal share of those chances, but never did it really feel like they were controlling the game. And broadly, Liverpool did what Liverpool do this season and exerted their control multiple times, pretty much constantly, in order to just dampen down what it was that Bournemouth were doing. And it worked really well to Liverpool's advantage, even though a couple of guys in there weren't exactly having a fantastic day. Szoboszlai, I thought, was a little bit all over the place. The energy was still there, but it wasn't quite getting that end result. Trent didn't look like he switched on. I didn't think Trent looked like he switched on for the entire game, frankly, but there were a couple of times we thought, okay, you're ghosting into the right position. And I think, honestly, we were carried through this game yet again by the two at the centre of our midfield and Virgil van Dijk. Konate's still looking good, but he's still looking a little bit stiff. Alisson pulled off some great saves, especially towards the end of the game. I think we still do genuinely have a great goalkeeper, and this was the battle of the two great goalkeepers and the most expensive goalkeepers in the world. And I think overall Alisson probably came out top, probably because he didn't concede. But there were a couple of times where you thought it looked a little bit hairy, a little bit worrying. There were definitely chances out there. I think there was a couple of times where they got in behind Robbo, but also behind Trent. And it made it just a little bit, oh, they are still in this. Obviously, they had the offside goal, but that was still very much offside. That was the Kerkez overlap that so many people were worried about. But I think broadly, yeah, it was that three. It was really Virgil van Dijk, Ryan Gravenberch and McAllister that have created this unit. And obviously there's a little square back there with Virgil van Dijk and Konate and McAllister and Gravenberch immediately in front of it. But it's now that movement of those three. Gravenberch really covers for a lot of Trent's game. McAllister is a lot more vertical on the field, and you can tell there's that aggression. It feels much more aggressive from him, whereas Gravenberch very often holds off, reads the play, is able to pick off balls here and there as they come through, and is very much always trying to find the outball to Szoboszlai or even to Diaz or Salah on that side, right? It's a system where now you can tell the way that the shapes And the overall narrative of where Liverpool's formation and how they play games is beginning to become a lot more familiar and beginning to become a lot more intrinsic to these Liverpool players. A lot of these guys look a lot more accomplished. Like, as they said in commentary, it feels like a very mature performance from Liverpool. And that's not something that I always felt like. There were times during the Klopp era where I felt like there was mature performances, but very often because of the frenetic nature of the game, we never really got credit for that. And I think that Slot has brought that energy, he's brought that pressing, he's brought that organisation, he's brought the know-how that Klopp had, and he's built on that. And it's working exceptionally well at this point. Now, granted, you could probably make the argument that we're being carried through in a number of these games by some of the big names. There have been great performances from Trent, great performances from Van Dijk. Van Dijk, yet again, was just so self-assured today, so solid at the back, that I really never worried that they were going to get through on his side, at least. It gave Robbo the space to operate, and I don't think he was all that progressed in this game, actually, but it gave Robbo the space to operate in the way that he needed to, gave Trent the space to wander forward, because it pushes the whole back line over a little bit, and it really gave Gravenberch the license to basically just wander across in front of that back line and being where he needed to be. Honestly, he's making the other players around him better in Van Dijk and then in Gravenberch, and that has like a knock-on effect. If we're talking about the spine of a side, then these vertebrae are offering the structure that players can then play from. By the way, we've not even mentioned players like Luis Diaz yet. Great energy up top, didn't contribute anything in terms of directly to a goal, but was fantastic. And I think, again, like, we're talking about a masterstroke week here from Slot. Going away and losing in the Champions League, but still finishing top, that was down to the work that Liverpool have put in, the overall narrative this season so far, but also just the fact that he's brought in players into what feels like a relatively meaningless game, given them some meaning, given them some structure, given them the chance to prove themselves, left this team that basically went out and... It's hard to say that Liverpool ever wiped the floor with people, but they really felt like they dominated against Bournemouth today. And you could clearly see there was a gulf in the way that Bournemouth operate after the long run that Bournemouth have been on. This has been like their 11th game unbeaten. They've beaten a lot of decent teams in there, and they've also drawn against a lot of decent teams in there. And remember, a draw this weekend is as good as a loss because Arsenal are playing Man City. If they come out the other side of that, they're feeling good about themselves. And we've had a disappointing result. We've not capitalised. But boy, did we capitalise. And that puts pressure on everyone else around us. Nottingham Forest, by the way, won 7-0 this weekend against a Brighton team who, annoyingly, I think we actually play them in a couple of weeks' time. Who do we play next? So Bournemouth now have beaten quite a few decent sides. Nottingham have beaten them. In our next couple of games, we play Spurs, we play Plymouth, we play Everton. We don't play Brighton. We've done that. We don't play Brighton for ages, actually. We're entering that tricky period, right? We're entering that tricky time now. The Spurs game away, that's what, 5 days away from now? Then there's 3 days and then we're against Plymouth. We'll rotate heavily in that time. I think we'll play our starting 11 again in that period. But this week has set us up to at least be at our strongest going into those games. Like I said, that second phase of players, that second set of players, all fielded in the Champions League. Chiesa now has been spoken about as getting more league minutes, which I think is also fantastic. Curtis Jones is back. He was the one who got the assist for that exceptional Salah finish. By the way, Salah penalty, great penalty. Salah finish, all-time Premier League finish. That's like a Salah signature at this point. Very few other players have signature goals like that in the league. I'd argue only there's a couple of, maybe a Cole Palmer, someone like that within the league who has that. If you were to just black out the footage and only show Salah, you would know that's Mo Salah from the way that he moves, from the way that he moves the opposition players. That's a signature now of what he's doing. And this ability to put the contract talks, the turning of heads to other contracts and other cities and other places, other big pulls by Van Dijk, Trent and Salah has been something that has been defining for Liverpool. As Liverpool comes to the end of this transfer window, we've obviously not signed anyone, and Slot has made some very big statements about that, what we're saving for the summer, what it is that we need to do, the strengthening we need to do. Hasn't necessarily allayed any Liverpool fears about losing some of these bigger names. But also what he's done is revitalised and reinvigorated some of the players who, frankly, if you'd have identified them at the start or the end of the Klopp era before Slot had hit, you would have said, well, maybe he'll be moved on, maybe he'll be moved on. And I think we will move some players on in the summer. But if this is going to be that last dance, if this is going to be that last structure of the squad that we know it as it is, because losing even one of those spine guys this summer, possibly two if we lose Anderson as well, is a big change for us. And it speaks to a bigger thing at Liverpool. It speaks to, like, the fact that Liverpool have been able to build on this consistency, lose Jurgen Klopp. It's not that we kept people from upstairs. We brought in Edwards, we brought in Hughes, someone who basically built that previous Bournemouth team before. And we were expecting, I think, a bigger shift. But what they actually did was say, consistency will see us through this time. Keeping these players, assessing them, selling some of that youth, basically identifying the youth that we actually want to bring through, or at least, revitalize. The Morton types. Nalo, I know, got sent off the other night, but I think he's a fantastic young player for Liverpool. Jayden Danns, those kind of players. We'll see some of these guys go out on loan towards the end of this window, and we'll see Liverpool looking to build towards a strategy for the summer, not only in selling youth, but also selling other big players or letting other big players move on, and then also building an attractive prospect for these players to arrive to. Nothing is more attractive than a team that has just won the league, that has some spots up for grabs, that you can make yours under a manager that people seem to love to play for, in an environment that people seem to love to play in, that not only has recent history that you can build on, but also recent history that has enough glow that when you come in, you can be part of that phylum of players. You can be part of those big names. You could be the next Salah. You could be the next Gravenberch. You could be the next Van Dijk, McAllister, any of these guys who get more, basically, limelight, more time in the sun from not only the Premier League, but also from Liverpool fans. And it doesn't, we could lose every game between now and the end of the season, and I still call this a great Liverpool season. I'd still call this prolific. I would still call this a special change in Liverpool's season. Obviously, it'd be an epic collapse. But you get my point, right? Next couple of games is interesting, those two games. We rotate against Plymouth. I have no doubt about that. But then we play against Everton away from home. Wolves are home. We go into that City game. City will have, I think City will have come off the back of their Champions League result at that point, so they might be doubling down on the league by then. We then play Newcastle. We've got Villa in those games as well. Villa looking good in the Champions League. Villa playing as I speak right now. 1-0 down to Wolves, actually, weirdly. But yeah, they'll have Marcus Rashford by that point, most probably. And again, it's another weekend where Liverpool have put the pressure on, where Liverpool have basically gone, right, okay, we're going to set the standard. Is anyone else going to step up to us? And we have to keep that between now and the end of the season. I know there's going to be someone moaning about someone I haven't mentioned in here, so I'm going to have to check my lineups and just make sure I've mentioned everyone. Gakpo today, I didn't think he was anonymous by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's very involved in build-up play, but I thought Diaz was the better of the two on that side. And then there's almost like a pairing on one side where it's Diaz plays an almost Szoboszlai-esque role on one side, and then Szoboszlai and Salah on the other side. I think that works quite well. There's like two triangles basically that do a bit of rotation in build-up, and it works really, really well. But then I also want to talk about Curtis Jones, who set up that other goal. Wataru Endo basically came on late. And if you'd have seen some of these substitutions, and I've said this time after time after time now, 1, 2, 3, 4. It was only 4 subs in this game. Normally we make 5 in more recent games. You see the difference in shape that is made by every one of these subs. Endo coming on for Salah, obviously a very obvious change in shape. Bradley coming on for Trent, a very obvious change in emphasis. Darwin coming on for Gakpo, a very obvious change in where the striker is there. Where does that push someone like Diaz? And then Jones coming on for McAllister, certainly a change in emphasis for the overall midfield, dropping Sobo or Curtis a little bit deeper, makes a big difference to how we control matches, but also just gives us a bit of rotation in there. It's an impressive performance today from Liverpool. I've got to say, I think, overall narrative-wise, I called this a masterstroke this week. Defensively, I think we have been open. Defensively, I think there's been a couple of times where I think Bournemouth have more than enough impressive chances and put us in a period where really we should have been more worried. We should have been a little bit more, how can I put it, like, oh, we're on the back foot now. And we never really looked like we played that way. Liverpool never seemed to have lost their heads. Liverpool never seemed to have worried or panicked in this game. And it's really reassuring to see. I want to know what you guys think about this performance, how Liverpool played overall, how we essentially played a team who've been in very good form recently and took them out of their winning form. This is the thing. Our control is not only controlling in terms of, hey, we've got possession, it knocks the other team off their axis, off their beat, off their, I guess I want to say, a rhythm. But how do we maintain ours if we're like doing this? Do you know what I mean? There's like us being that antimatter to whatever the opposition is a very draining process. But it's very different to the way that Klopp achieved it, and it works really well. When we win the ball back, we're not going at them. We're just winning it back and going, cool, your bit's over now. We're going to start our period. It's very different in the way we control the games. Be really interested to know what you guys think in the comments below. Who impressed you? Let me know. Be doing a follow-up video on this, obviously, later tomorrow, and there'll be plenty more thoughts in there as well as we see more stats come out, see more big ideas come out. Appreciate you guys looking in, and I'll chat to you in a while. Much love.